It's episode 577 of the Locked On Texas Rangers podcast. On today's show, I'm going to be talking about a weird triple play, a strange game that happened last night, the Rangers offense looking like it had signs of life at the end of the game, and a little bit about the TV broadcast. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On the Texas Rangers. I'm your host, Bryce Patrick, Rangers expert and reporter, entering year 4 covering the Texas Rangers for the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick, follow the show at Locked On Rangers, and subscribe on YouTube. We're crawling closer to 800 subscribers, hoping to hit that by the end of the month. Thank you guys so much who have already subscribed on YouTube, and for those of you who are watching right now. I'm going to get into a little bit of this weird game that happened last night, and what was looking like a really depressing game, but ended on a really positive note for the Texas Rangers. But first, this episode is brought to you by Blue Nile. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Rangers listeners get $50 off $500 spent. Go use code LOCKEDON at checkout. Now let's get into this weird game. The Rangers had a 2-4 loss to Seattle last night. I was complaining on yesterday's episode about them not doing enough in the late innings, and it feeling like once the Rangers lost the lead, the game was pretty much lost. And the Rangers are 2-9 through 11 games, so it's not like that's been completely off. But they did score their 2 runs in the 9th inning. But I want to get into this weird triple play that could have been an unassisted triple play. Would have been the first unassisted triple play in forever. Maybe the Rangers have ever turned. But it was just a weird moment, and the broadcast didn't quite catch it, and Seattle broadcast didn't catch it at all until everyone was walking off the field, and even the players didn't catch it until the Rangers were walking off the field. They didn't really realize what happened. Dane Dunning was pitching in this one, and he was not off to a great start. He walked Adam Frazier on a full count pitch, Ty France singled on a 1-0 pitch, and then Jesse Winker, who has had some bad luck. He has walked the most in baseball and walked, I believe, twice as many times as he struck out. He had 12 walks and I believe 6 strikeouts coming into this game. He had a full count pitch and he lined it right to the first baseman, Nathaniel Lowe, who speared it. It looked like it bounced a little bit. So there were runners on first and second, and they were off with the pitch because it was a full count pitch. They thought, okay, well, Jesse Winker is not striking out a whole bunch. He's going to put this ball in play, and it's probably going to be on the ground, and so we want to avoid turning 2 because Jesse Winker is not a super fast runner, so we want to avoid the Rangers being able to turn an easy double play. But that's not what happened. It was absolutely speared. A great play by Nathaniel Lowe, and a smart play, seeing the runners were already at second and third by the time he pretty much caught it. So he catches it, that's out number 1, steps on first base, that's out number 2, and then throws it to second base where Corey Seager is standing there, and that's out number 3. They had runners on second and third at the end of that play, just kind of staring like, what the heck happened? Why are you walking off the field? You only got 1 out. You only got the runner at first. But no, Nathaniel Lowe probably had time, if he wanted to, after he stepped on first base, to go run it over himself and get to second base by the time the runner figured out what the heck was happening and came back from third base. But he didn't do that, and I respect it because that's probably the safer, smarter play. Just toss it to Corey Seager. And the Rangers had their first triple play since 2018. How long has it been since 2018? Well, Jurickson Profar was one of the ones that was turning that triple play the last time the Rangers had one. So, yeah, it's been a minute. But it's not like everything was coming up super duper roses for Nathaniel Lowe, even though offensively he's been doing really well despite not having a home run. He's reached base in every single game the Rangers have had. But the very next inning, defensively, this is one of my issues with him. Actually, excuse me, not the very next inning, but later in the game, I believe it was the 3rd inning. Yeah. There was a fielding error by Nathaniel Lowe that Cal Raleigh reached on an error by him, a ball that was smacked right down the first base line, and he probably should have. It was kind of a tough play, but one that you expect a major league first baseman to make. He's made some improvements from last year. He started the year really bad defensively last year, just flat out startlingly bad. Mainly because Ronald Guzman had been the Rangers' first baseman for the last couple of years before that, and then they'd had Mitch Moreland. I was about to say Mitch Garver. No, Mitch Garver was not playing first base for the Rangers in the years before 2016 or whatever it was. But they've had really good defensive first basemen for a lot of years. They also had Mark Teixeira as well. Like, they've had good first basemen basically since I've been paying attention to baseball, my entire grown adult life. But Nathaniel Lowe is not a great defensive first baseman. He's a pretty decent offensive first baseman. He's getting better. I would like him to start hitting baseballs over the fence. But of the guys who are in their homer droughts on this road trip, I really don't think a lot of them are going to break it. The Rangers probably aren't going to have a whole lot of home runs on this road trip. I don't believe. I think they might have hit one so far in this road trip. But it's that April air. I always forget about it because, I don't think about how cold it is in April other places. I just think about Texas weather. I mean, it's 76 and cloudy right now, but it's, 50s, 60s, whatever. On this road trip, they're on the West Coast. They are in the northern part of our country in Oakland and Seattle, where in the beginning of the season and the end of the season, balls go to die. Fly balls go to die. You got to line that son of a gun as hard as you freaking can and get that launch angle just up a little bit. You don't want any big fly balls. You want to hit the least air possible because that cold air just knocks baseballs down. There were two probable home runs. Potential. I don't want to say probable, but potential home runs in, normal parks where it's not frigid freezing in the first month of the season. One of them was hit by Mitch Garver. One of them was hit by Corey Seager, who is absolutely spraying the baseball right now. The dude is lighting it up, and I think the home runs will start to come. The walks are there, and Corey Seager is one of those hitters who can have what I consider just my own little OCD-ness of like the holy grail of what is a great offensive player. The 3, 4, 5 seasons, I'm calling it. I don't know if it's been said somewhere else. It probably has. But the 3, 4, 5 season in your slash line, where the first number starts with 3, you're hitting over 300, your on base is over 400, and you're slugging over 500. That's automatically an OPS at least over 900, which is great. And you're getting a lot of contact, and you're getting on base, and you're hitting the ball hard. Those are the things you want your baseball players to do. You want to make some pretty decent contact. You want them to walk a bunch, and you want them to hit baseballs hard. Those are what the good offensive players do. That's what it takes to be a good offensive player. Now, I'm more focused on the 4-5 part. It's more important. The batting average of 300, that's just kind of, icing on the cake at this point. It really is. Anything above like 275 is great if you've got an on base over 350. That's really all that counts in this day and age. Some Yankees fans that I was arguing with that said that they said they should have said the Yankees don't matter. But what they did say was that walks don't matter. Walks are very important. But anyway, all that to say, Mitch Garver and Corey Seager have been hitting the ball very hard, and don't expect a lot of home run-less streaks to be broken. There's a few guys that have been hitting the baseball decently well that don't have home runs for the Rangers this season. Nathaniel Lowe. Well, Marcus Semien has not been hitting it decently well, but he is without a home run as well. Cole Calhoun does not have a home run. Charlie Culberson, I know you're shocked the great Charlie Culberson does not have a home run, but he has been pouring in some pretty great offensive numbers, a 916 OPS at this point, which is better than every Rangers starter at this point. Just behind the great Jonah Heim, whose numbers are coming back down to earth just a little bit. He's still got an OPS over 1,000. Don't worry, he's still going to win his MVP, but it's not going to be by nearly as much as we thought. Coming up, I'm going to get into which guys are improving offensively, a little bit about why I think the Rangers have swung a little bit too far in the direction of platoons. But first, this episode is brought to you by Blue Nile. This is a great new sponsor that has got some fancy jewelry, and it's everyday jewelry. Mother's Day is coming up. Got to put that on your radars. Also, if you are looking to get engaged, that is also a thing that you need fancy jewelry for. And, there's nowhere better to get it than Blue Nile. They've got all kinds of great stuff. You can celebrate the women in your life on BlueNile.com. You can easily navigate thousands of fine jewelry options at every price point. If you're looking for fine jewelry but having trouble choosing, Blue Nile's got jewelry experts. They're on hand 24/7. You can chat with them or on the phone, or just chat. You find a memorable gift for every single budget. This Mother's Day, give mom something that she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. Locked On Rangers get $50 off $500. This podcast exclusive is only good through Mother's Day, so use code Locked On. That's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. For your second listen, go ahead and check out the Locked On Now podcast. It is a great recap from around the network. They've got all of us on there giving our 2 cents on what happened. For your next listen, check out that. It can recap all MLB games with analysis from our local experts, taking fans through the season like no other network. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Now, let's look a little bit at some of the improvements of Marcus Semien. When I talked about if it was time to freak out about him last week, maybe it was a little premature. I said so. I said so myself. I mean, he's Marcus freaking Semien. He is a really good baseball player. You've heard me say this 100 times, and I'm going to say it 100 more throughout the season. He has finished top 3 in MVP voting 2 of the last 3 seasons. Every year that there has not been a global pandemic that shortened the season to 60 games. So, the global pandemic has not shortened this season to 60 games. So it stands to reason that he is on pace, not to be on pace guy, but a little bit to be on pace guy, to have another top 3 MVP finish, if not number 1. I mean, Vladdy Guerrero Jr. is already crushing it this season, so maybe that's a tough ask. But he's been doing much better. His plate appearances have looked much better. He has been striking out less. He's still not walking a lot, which again was not something that he ever did a whole lot. But he's got a 2-game hit streak going into Seattle. On this road trip, he has had hits in every single game. He had a 2 RBI game on the first game of this series in Seattle. Had a 2-hit game in this game as well. So he's really looking on the up. His advanced numbers are better than they were when we last talked about him. He hadn't barreled any baseballs. He has barreled now 2 of them. So that's a little bit better. His expecting batting average is right around 200 as opposed to what his actual batting average is right now, which I believe is, where'd we go? Yeah, 174. The OPS plus of 39 is not great, but some of the other expected numbers, his sprint speed is in the top 11%. His whiff rate is in the top third of baseball. Same with his strikeout rate. His max exit velocity is in the top 40th percentile. Stuff's improving. And, he was sick to start the season. His timing wasn't there. Everybody had a shortened spring training. It was not a great start to the season for anybody. Everybody's still getting their timing. I think even Corey Seager, who is hitting pretty well, not getting a whole lot of extra base hits at this point, but hitting pretty well and getting on base at a really high clip. Even he is struggling to get his timing, and I think Mitch Garver might be too. But I want to get into this platoon thing that the Rangers are doing, because it's not, none of the players that are platooning at this point are doing super well. The positions they're platooning are third base a little bit more than I thought they would. I thought they'd give a lot more of that to Andy Ibanez than he has been given. But they're also platooning left field, which we knew, and platooning right field a little bit as well, which I kind of suspected they would do one of those, but I thought that they would just give Cole Calhoun leeway to just kind of do his thing. They're also platooning DH a little bit, which I find really confusing. You can only platoon so many pitches, or so many players, and so many different positions. Now, it was a great start to the season, great first couple of games for Nick Solak and Brad Miller, but they've kind of come back down to earth just a little bit. Instead of the over 2,000 OPS that Brad Miller had to start the season, he's got an OPS back down to 800. He hasn't had a home run since that first series. Had some in the first couple of games. That's fine. His on-base is dipped below 300, and Nick Solak, after his great start to the season, his OPS is down below 700. Now, Nick Solak and Brad Miller, both their splits have been pretty extreme, righty-lefty, so I get going pretty hard on that, but what I don't love is the Willie Calhoun replacing him as the DH. If you're going to put him in there as the DH, if you've got Mitch Garver in as the catcher, I don't understand taking Willie out. His splits are not that extreme. They're really not. For his career against right-handed and left-handed pitching, there is a 7-point difference in OPS. 7 points. He slugs 3 points better against lefties than righties, but his on base is 10 points higher against righties versus lefties. So like, it's really not that big a difference. 10 points is the most in batting average, on base, and slugging that is different in his right-handed versus left-handed pitching in his career. I really think you got to give this guy a chance because he could be one of the better bats in your lineup. Nick Solak has shown some promise, a little bit more than I thought this season. He's had some really good at-bats. I mean, his OPS is down below 700, but it's after 11 games. Like, it's really hard to make these grand sweeping judgments every day, which is part of the difficulty of having a podcast every single day. But it's also part of the fun. It's just taking a look in depth at these guys. And I think that it's having an effect on these guys. Cole Calhoun, I kind of get going with the platoon. His splits have been, I think it's about a 70-point switch, 70-point split between right-handed versus left-handed pitching in his OPS. 765 against right-handed pitching OPS in his career in 3,194 plate appearances. Against lefties, he has a 699 OPS, which is pretty nice, but 66 points lower than his OPS against righties. He's also 34. Also, something I wanted to bring up about the game that I forgot to mention in my first segment, but Cole Calhoun, what are you doing stealing bases? What are you doing, man? You're 34 years old. You came into the league in 2012. It has been a decade. You came in after Mike Trout. This guy came into the league after Mike Trout, who is, 30 years old now, I think. It's kind of insane that he's been in the league this long. He also only took 2 years to get up to the majors. But you're 34 years old. You are not a stealing base threat. I like that the Rangers are a little aggressive in their stolen bases. He had one attempt at stolen base last year. He was successful. The most he has had in his career when he was a young man, a spry young 30-year-old. He had 6 stolen bases and 2 caught stealing. For his career, he has 31 stolen bases, 15 caught stealing. He was close. He was close. And I do occasionally get some joy out of the older gentleman getting one over on the catcher, if he's successful. But if he's not, then it's very upsetting. You got to really pick your spots. Adrian Beltre would always have 1 stolen base a year from age 35 just to show that he could do it. And it was always in a really funny situation. He's like, yeah, I'm old, but I can still run and I can still beat you dumb catcher. But if it's not working, then it's embarrassing. It's not fun. It's embarrassing. So I don't know. Maybe that's your one this year. That's all you get. You had your one. You had your fun. You got caught. Don't do it again, unless you're told to, and it's whatever situation. But in general, I don't love the idea of a 34-year-old who has never been speedy trying to swipe bags. I'm going to get into a little bit of the broadcast stuff. The Rangers booth has had a new member. I don't know if he's new technically to the Rangers, but he's new, at least to me, watching the Rangers. He's spent some time in Seattle. I'm going to talk about him and about the Friday night broadcast that is going to be on Apple TV. But first, this episode is brought to you by BetOnline.net. You guys know about BetOnline.net. It's the best place to wager on all of your favorite sports. If you want to bet on the Rangers to end this losing streak or make the playoffs, or I bet their odds on the Rangers making the playoffs right now is even more of a long shot because they were 91% chance to miss the playoffs beforehand. If you're feeling really confident and have some money to spare, you can go to betonline.net. You can see those odds. They've got odds for all kinds of stuff. They've got NBA playoffs. They've got the start of the Major League Baseball season. They've got esports. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to sign up to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline. It's where the game starts. Now, let's talk a little bit about the broadcast. In the booth for this Seattle series, the Rangers have had a new friend join Dave Raymond in these last couple of games. His name is Dave Valle. You might remember the great Dave Valle from his time with the Texas Rangers or in Major League Baseball. He was a Major League Baseball player for 13 seasons, 970 games. Started his career in Seattle, was there in 1984 is when he made his debut. He was there all the way to 1993, then split the 1994 season between Boston and Milwaukee in 46 games, then finished off his career as a 34-year-old for 2 seasons. Well, I guess he wasn't 34 for 2 seasons, but he came to Texas as a 34-year-old in 1995 and was there in 1996, the first time the Texas Rangers made the postseason. He was the backup catcher to the great Pudge Rodriguez. Love me some 90s Rangers catchers. This guy had a really great 1996 season. As a 35-year-old, he played in 42 games, hit .302, on base of .368, and slugged .500. That's an .868 OPS with 3 home runs as a backup catcher. Stuff you love to see. He's also a really great defensive catcher, really smart guy, really affable guy, and has added a lot to the broadcast. I've really liked what he has said. And one of the things that bothers me about certain color analysts turned sometimes god-awful play-by-play guys in C.J. Nitkowski is when they make the broadcast too much about themselves, too much about their own baseball career. That's something that's universal in sports that kind of drags down the game. It's really easy if you were a great player to look at the game now and be like, they couldn't do what I could do. Baseball was better back in my day. I don't like all this new whatever fancy nonsense that they're doing in the game today. And that's one of the most difficult things about being a great player turned broadcaster, is it's real easy to be grumpy. And it's a natural disposition for older folks to be grumpy. I get it. Life is hard and being old seems difficult. So, grump. That's a natural disposition to do. It happens. It's not just baseball. Well, baseball is pretty bad about it, especially on the national broadcast. Some of the guys who just seem like they don't even like the sport. Like, they're like, ugh, I hate watching this stupid game. All these kids having fun, and, they're throwing 99 miles an hour. Back in my day, we threw 85, and you liked it. And we didn't hit home runs. We bunted, and we did boring things, and we didn't celebrate because we hated baseball. And now they're having fun with it and doing exciting things, and that sucks. Well, for all of C.J. Nitkowski's faults, he does not do that. But one of the other things is to make it about their career and bring up their career in moments when it doesn't really matter. Part of the hard part of being a color guy is just to sprinkle in facts about the game. Use your breadth of knowledge. You don't have to necessarily say, okay, well, back in my day, on June 16th, 1962, I was also in a 2-1 count. So there you go. This is what's going to happen in this 2-1 count. It's just pepper that in when it needs it. Not all the time. When it calls for it. When the play-by-play guy is like, hey, didn't you also see a weird triple play like this back in this game in the 1980s? Oh yeah, well then go into that. But just kind of use that as your general baseball knowledge. Analyze the situation as it is. And the Rangers have a really great TV guy in terms of play-by-play in Dave Raymond. He is fantastic. One of the best in the business. Absolutely love him. Very affable and does a great job of calling the baseball games. And Valle has done a really good job, and he is going to be with the Rangers throughout this year. I don't know if he's just going to do Seattle games, because it seems like he's pretty Seattle-based. He's had a significant career on TV with the Mariners broadcast. He worked on their TV and radio broadcast from 1997 to 2013. He's also spent some time on MLB Network. He also interviewed for the Seattle Mariners skipper position a couple of years ago. Did not get that. Now he is back in the booth. I don't believe he's been on TV in a couple of years, maybe since 2015 or 16 was the last thing that I remember seeing him on. He could have been on in occasional roles from then, but he's done a really good job. They also have C.J. Nitkowski. It's Tags last year, which is a darn shame. I don't know how many games he's calling this year, but for those of you who are wondering, I'm pretty sure the way that this works, I know the way that it works with Eric Nadel is he sets out the number of games that he's going to call each year. He calls a couple fewer games each year and decides if he's going to call it a career or not. Tag is pretty much the same way. He is a Hall of Famer. He is a Rangers Hall of Famer. He is Mr. Ranger for a freaking reason. He is beloved. The cookie talk is beloved. Everything about Tom A. Green. I think it's Anthony. Tom Grieve is just absolutely perfect, and it's going to be devastating to not have him in the booth next year. But it'll all be nice for him to go and enjoy his career. But the Rangers booth on Friday night is not going to be Dave Raymond and friends. It is going to be a new booth, which if you haven't checked out any of the Apple TV broadcasts, well, this is going to be your time to do it because it's the Rangers broadcast. They have a couple of different booths, but the main one that they've had is Steven Nelson doing play-by-play, analysts Hunter Pence and Katie Nolan, and Heidi Watney as the reporter. This has been one of my favorite booths in baseball. Now, Hunter Pence, obviously, former Rangers great back in my first year doing this podcast in 2019. He has been delightful on the broadcast. He's also working for MLB Network. He has taken a little bit of time off last year for himself. Absolute weirdo, delightful dude, very insightful baseball man. And some of the best times for players to be broadcasters is when they're right done with their career. Alex Rodriguez is a great example of this. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. I hate the broadcaster that Alex Rodriguez is now. And I don't love the person in general because of many factors. But his first couple years on the TV broadcast, he was fantastic. He was analytical. He was insightful. He was not old man yells at clouds. And then he devolved into, I'm going to have a stat prepared. I'm going to read this off. And then I'm going to yell about how players aren't as good as me, which, they're not. A-Rod, most of them are not as good as you. That's fine. You're one of the best played baseball players ever. Cool. You don't have to rub it in our faces. We all know that. You're also kind of a jerk and not likable. But those first couple of years out, I don't think Hunter Pence is ever going to turn like this because Hunter Pence has always been a delightful weirdo who brings a lot of insight and a lot of fun into analyzing baseball. If you don't know who Katie Nolan is, first off, you should, because she is fantastic. She started her career in broadcast on YouTube. She is basically the intersection of sports and comedy. She is the queen of it. There is no one better than her. She has been phenomenal at it and has been squandered very badly by two different TV networks. Recently, she started a career on Fox. She was on the show called Crowd Goes Wild. Then she had her own late night show called Garbage Time, which was hilarious and horribly mismanaged, and has also had a podcast. Then she had Always Late with Katie Nolan. Her contract was signed once she became a free agent after Fox didn't really know what to do with her, tried her as a sideline reporter, which is not her role. She is funny sports person. That's what she is. She is hilarious. She is great at it, and she is very insightful. And that is kind of what her role is in this broadcast. You don't normally have two analysts a whole lot of times, except for big national broadcasts, and usually it's just two players that are grumping about two different things. This time, this booth has been really good. Steven Nelson has done a good job on play-by-play. Hunter Pence is, geeking out and excited and talking about baseball. He was talking about on last week's broadcast, which is one of my favorite moments of the broadcast, about the knob of the bat and about how, oh my gosh, this guy has a really big knob, and Katie Nolan is just laughing and beside herself. It's like, Hunter, you can't say that on TV. Phrasing, dude. It's just, she provides a whole lot of comedy and fun. Don't expect her to be, the analytics person that's bringing all this kind of different insight. She's there to be fun sports person, and she does a great job of it. It's a great combination of the booth. You also got Heidi Watney, who is a seasoned veteran reporter on the sidelines, and part of their other broadcast is headlined by play-by-play person Melanie Newman. I just want to give a shout out to Melanie Newman, who is the second woman ever to be a play-by-play lead broadcaster on a MLB broadcast during a national broadcast that is. She does have some local ties, in case you didn't know. She was a member of the Frisco Rough Riders broadcast team, and I believe it was 2015 or 16, back when she was here, and she has broken a lot of barriers and done a really great job, and she is a solid broadcaster, and shout out to her. I'm not sure which crew is going to be on this game. I'm assuming it's the Hunter Pence, Steven Nelson, Katie Nolan booth. I am hoping for that, because it's going to be a West Coast game, and it is going to be West Coast weird against the A's, and we'll just kind of see how it plays out. But that is something to look forward to. Also, if you don't know how to find it, if you don't have an Apple TV Plus subscription because you don't like watching Ted Lasso, or you just don't want more subscription, totally get it. But even if you don't have that subscription, it's free. Just go find the app or the website or whatever and it is free even if you don't have that subscription. So you don't have to worry about paying for another thing. It's free for now. I'm not going to say that it's going to be free for the entire season. They'll probably have a deal with Peacock too by the end of the season, so you'll have 4 different streaming services or whatever that you have to watch your baseball games on. But for now, it's great. I really love that booth. I'm looking forward to them calling a Rangers game, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more Dave Valle in the booth for the Texas Rangers. Don't know how many games he'll be on this year, but any game with him or Tag is a great game in my book. Thank you guys so much for listening to me talk about the booth, about the Rangers improving, and a little bit about what is going on with that weird game and a weird triple play last night. On tomorrow's show, I'll talk a little bit about the farm, do some Friday farm. We'll talk about what the heck's going on with Oakland, how they are leading, well, at least last time I checked yesterday, they were leading the division somehow after selling literally everybody. Not going to get to talk with Jason Burke. Could not work out the scheduling, which is a darn shame. But I'll have some more Oakland A's talk on tomorrow's show. But now go make your second listen Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, please just call him Sully. He got his unique perspective on the major leagues past and present. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Y'all, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.